Hello and welcome. Today we are going to deal with history chapter, tribal, Dikus, and the vision of a golden age. Before we get into mind maps, let me tell you a story. In 1895, there was a man named Birsa who used to walk around in the villages of Chota Nagpur in Bihar. People believed that he had miraculous powers to heal people and to multiply crops. Birsa was from a Munda tribe. Followers were from the other tribes as well, such as Oraos and Santals. In this chapter, we are going to look at what problems did Birsa set out to resolve and why were the tribals not happy about the Dikus, who were the Britishers, the outsiders coming into their land. So let's get started.
Let's look at the life of tribal groups. Many tribal groups were Jum cultivators, that is, shifting cultivation. This was done on small patches of land, mostly in forests. So they used to clear the treetops so that the light could reach the ground, and they used to burn the vegetation to clear it for plantation or clear it for cultivation. They used to scatter the seeds instead of plowing. And the field that was cultivated was often left fallow. Fallow meaning a field left uncultivated for a while so that the soil recovers fertility. This was mainly done in hilly areas and forest tracts of northeast and central India. The Jum cultivators were happy because they had free movement. Some of the tribals were hunters and gatherers. Tribals often believed that forest was essential for their survival. Example, Khons in Orissa. They were a community of hunters and they divided the meat amongst themselves. They collected fruits from forest, oil they extracted from seeds of sal and mahua, and they used forest herbs for medicinal purposes. Local weavers and leather workers often turned to cones for supplies of kusum and palash flowers for color for their cloth and leather. Some exchanged goods such as rice and other grains. Some tribals also did some odd jobs such as carrying loads and building roads. But the Baigas of central India were very reluctant, very hesitant to work for others. But some even herded animals. Many tribal groups lived by herding and rearing animals. They were pastoralists who moved with their herds of cattle or sheep according to the season. Van Gujjars of Punjab, Labadis of Andhra Pradesh, Gaddis of Kullu were all shepherds. Bakarwals of Kashmir reared goats. Some even took to settled cultivation. That means they had their field in one place. They used to use plow and they also got rights for their land to live on. British officials often felt that the tribal groups such as Gonds and Santals were more civilized than the other groups of tribals. Now, let's see how colonial rule affected their lifestyle. In the villages, there was tribal chief, and he was a very important person. He had economic power, he used to administer and control territories. But the arrival of the British changed his role and he lost power because British started to interfere in the daily activities of these people.
Now, the British were uncomfortable. They were not very happy about groups of people moving from one place to another. They wanted tribal groups to settle down in one place because it was easier to control and administrate them. But the Britishers' efforts to settle these Jum cultivators was unsuccessful. Let's see what happens.
How did they interfere? Britishers implemented forest laws. to control the forest. They declared forest as state property. Imagine, for generations, these tribal used to look after that land. That land was taken away from them. The tribals were not allowed to move freely. Now, the British wanted labor to cut trees for railway sleepers. What are railway sleepers? Railway sleepers are basically log of woods used on railway tracks. They wanted laborers to cut trees to make these railway sleepers. So they found a solution. They gave a patch of land to the tribals for cultivation. And in return, the village had to provide labor to the forest department to make these railway sleepers, and they often got the labor for very cheap price. There arise problems with trade. Traders and moneylenders started coming to forest, and they were offering them loan, and they asked them to work for wages. Example, Hazaribagh in present day Jharkhand was an area where Santals reared cocoons, but they were only paid 3 to 4 rupees for 1,000 cocoons. And these cocoons were exported to Burdwan and Gaya and was sold for 5 times the price of what they had purchased it for. Now, finding it very difficult to survive in the forest, the tribals had to go looking for work. They had to go in search of work. Large number of tribals were recruited in tea plantation in Assam, coal mines in Jharkhand, and their pay was very miserable. They were paid very little. Let's look a little bit about Birsa Munda. Birsa urged the Mundas to give up drinking, clean villages, and stop believing in witchcraft. And he had also turned against missionaries and Hindu landlords who he saw as outside forces ruining the Munda way of life. He often spoke about the golden age, the Satyug, meaning the age of truth, reminding the Mundas of the life they lived, a good life they lived, the way they used to plant trees and lived honestly. And he urged them to do the same now. Britishers were not happy with Birsa. They arrested him in 1895 and jailed him for 2 years. After 2 years, when he was released, he started touring villages to gather support, and his followers started to attack police stations, churches, and they raided property of moneylenders. Some of his followers even raised a white flag as a symbol of Birsaraj. Sadly, in 1900, he died of cholera. However, the movement was significant in at least 2 ways. First, it forced the colonial government to introduce laws so that the land of tribals could not easily be taken away by the Dikus, the outsiders. It also showed that the tribals had the capacity to protest against injustice and express their anger against colonial rule.
That's it for today. See you next time. Take care. Thank you very much.